Hi, I'm Holly. I'm 17 years old, and I recently found out my father's terrible secret. He has to pay me not to tell my mother anything. Want to know what's in there? Watch on, and don't forget to share this video with your friends. My father's name is Marcus, and my mother's name is Leah. My parents and I live in Chicago, and I was born and raised there. My father and mother worked. My father worked in a construction site, and my mother was a school teacher. My parents got married when they were very young. As my mother says, for great love. They were still students when I was born. Then my dad was actively looking for work and got a job at a construction company. In principle, the money they both earned was enough for us. Only one thing was missing for complete happiness. Another child. My parents dreamed of having another baby boy or girl. My mother wanted to babysit a small child to carry it out, and my father also wanted it. Since I had grown up a long time ago, I didn't mind, especially since I could see how much they needed it. Only here all attempts were unsuccessful. Something was wrong with their health. In short, it took years. And when my parents, after numerous medical procedures, decided to adopt, they did it. Mom got pregnant. As I remember now, we celebrated this news so much. I saw my mother and father's eyes light up with happiness. It was beautiful. Because of the long-awaited pregnancy, my mother, having learned the news about the situation, immediately left work. My father promised that he would be able to provide for the whole family, and my mother devoted herself to taking care of herself. She then had a short period of time, about 2 to 3 months, and I began to notice that my dad became very busy. At dinner, he withdrew into himself, almost all the time, silent. He left for work without a mood and came the same way. To our questions, he said that everything was fine and everything was without details. I didn't want to get into his business, but my dad was getting too secretive. It wasn't like him. So, I decided to follow him. In the morning, as usual, he had breakfast and was about to leave, and I asked for a ride to school. I couldn't get a word out of him on the way either. When we said goodbye, he drove on, and I got into my friend's car, having agreed in advance, and we went after my father. It's a good thing he didn't know Jerry's car. I saw that my father had not gone to work, but to the coffee shop. This made me more stressed than I thought. Is he cheating on Mom? What is he anyway? I'm going to scratch his face all over, I began to yell, but Jerry calmed me down and asked me to sit in the car and watch in silence. So we sat for an hour, 2, 4. My father occasionally went to the toilet, but all the time he was holding a newspaper, drinking tea, and calling someone. It was the strangest thing I'd ever seen him do. So the whole day passed, and when it hit 6 o'clock, he packed up and went home. That's all. What about work? I thought. In the evening, after dinner, I approached him with questions. When I honestly admitted to Dad that I was following him, he was freaking out. I became indignant. Like, what the hell is going on? My mother came into the bedroom at my loud voice. I wanted to tell her what I'd seen today, but my dad shoved me out the door and shoved a couple of bucks into my hand, motioning me to shut up. I left the room and went to my room. Half an hour later, my father came to me and whispered that we would talk in the morning. The next morning, when he was driving me to school, he told me that he had recently lost his job. He didn't want to tell my mother about this, so as not to upset her because she's pregnant. And then there's this. I don't know how to live now, but I'm looking for a job. I call ads all day, he said, but I was against this approach. I told my father that I didn't like the idea. I told him I didn't know when he would find a new job. On the contrary, it is better for a pregnant mother to know what to be prepared for, so that there are no unwanted surprises. But my father didn't agree. Before I went out, he gave me another couple of dollars to keep me quiet. I didn't want to take the money, but I had to pay for some benefits at school. I didn't tell my parents about it, so the money was just right. As the days passed, we were still living with secrets, while my mother's tummy grew bigger and bigger, and Dad left every morning to look for work. I helped him distribute his resume, and one day, when my father was supposedly at work, an unknown number called our house. Mom picked up the phone, and they said they were calling about Dad's resume. Hell, we forgot to delete our home phone number. From here, my mother found out the whole truth. I called my dad, he came home, and my mom was furious. My father was terribly ashamed in front of my mother because they would soon have a child. And there was no work. This was terrible. When at last she let out all her emotions and came to her senses, the three of us sat down and talked peacefully. I suggested that we all look for work together. This way, we have a better chance of finding it faster. My mother, sitting at home, took a quick SMM course and started working online. And I mixed my father's resume on various platforms. But no matter how much they wanted to, the job was not found quickly. Probably 2 months passed. By that time, my father was pretty nervous. He was ready to go anywhere, even as a cleaner in a cafe. But I told him that I would soon have a vacation and I would work as a waitress. I didn't lose my positivity so as not to upset my parents, who were so upset. Well, then the help came somehow itself. My friend Jerry came to our house one day out of breath. He gave me the good news that a friend of his father's was looking for a superintendent in quick order, and Jerry immediately thought of my father. Dad immediately went to the interview and passed it successfully. That day we celebrated this event. For our family, it was a real occasion. My father went to work the next day, and my mother's heart calmed down. Since then, we have agreed not to hide this kind of thing from each other, because we are a family to overcome difficulties together. I invited Jerry over for dinner, and we thanked him for his help. Since then, we have been discussing our future plans more often. Well, after another 3 months in our family, there was a long-awaited addition. I had a little sister. We called her Hope, because hope is what guides us through the worst days. We must not forget about it, as well as the power of family support.
Hi everyone, my name is Mike. I have a little sister named Jessica. Once I found out about her secret, which she never told. To say that I was in shock is to say nothing. When I was 6 years old, I was joyfully informed that my mother went to the store for my sister. My mother was gone for 12 days, and then all sorts of aunts and neighbors ran in with gifts and booties, and everyone was happy and looked at something lying on my bed and constantly yawning. They told me that this is now my sister. After a good look at it, I asked my mother only 2 questions. Mom, couldn't you have picked a better one at the store? And why is she always making faces? That's how my little sister came into my life. As a child, like all other boys, I wanted a younger brother to play together as hooligans, but fortune gave me a little sister. Fortunately, Jessica was a kid, and we could play different boyish games. She was no worse than a boy, and could even stand up for herself. But with the arrival of my sister, all the attention in the family switched to her. All my toys were no longer mine. She could easily have come and taken any one she wanted, and if I objected, my mother told me not to be greedy, especially for my sister's sake. Since childhood, my parents had taught me to care for and protect her, that I am, as an older brother, responsible for her. So I made sure that something did not happen to her by accident, or that she didn't put any dirt in her mouth. She always wanted to taste everything. All the items she had in her hand dragged into her mouth. I couldn't always keep track of her. Once we played with her in the courtyard of the house. She is fast and loves to run. She ran around the yard like mad. She ran so hard that her legs knocked down and she fell and hit the slide. Immediately, blood appeared on her face. I was in a panic, and I'm afraid of blood. I ran home as fast as I could and called my mother. She saw Jessie and screamed in fear and called an ambulance. While the ambulance was driving, my mother and I tried to stop the blood. Fortunately, the injury was not serious, just a split eyebrow. There was no concussion. But from the moment she starts running, I try to be close to her and run after her. She thinks we're playing catch-up, but she can run like this for hours. Sometimes it's really hard to keep up with her. Growing up, everyone has their own interests, and we were no longer able to spend time together so closely. Our communication consisted of teasing each other. I didn't even know her friends, or what she was interested in. She sat in her room all day, sometimes just going out for dinner. It was strictly forbidden to enter her room, and I had no particular desire to do so. I had my own amusements. One evening, passing by her room, I saw a laptop on her bed. In it, all the time came some messages without stopping. Usually her door was always closed. Jessica went somewhere and forgot to close the door behind her. It was really interesting to see who so relentlessly writes. I couldn't resist going in to see who it was. It turned out that her friends in the group wrote to her. Everyone asked to show them something. I understand they wanted to see something from my sister, but what exactly was not clear. At the moment when I was reading, in the room went Jessica and quickly ran up and closed the laptop. She angrily looked at me and kicked me out of the room. The question of what she was supposed to show her friends remained in my mind and did not give rest. I had to find out what it was, and I began to watch her. I tried to notice any changes, but nothing strange happened. Even went to her room one night and stole her laptop, but there was a password that I didn't know. All my attempts resulted in failure, but fortune has given me another chance. Once, I accidentally noticed a black spot on the skin under Jessica's t-shirt, something like a birthmark. But as a child, I didn't notice it, and if I did, I would have noticed it. I didn't know what it was yet, although I had various guesses in my head. Then I decided to cheat. I went without knocking to her room and said that I knew everything. I didn't even know what I knew, but my sister was in shock. First of all, for the fact that I went so unexpected, and that I knew everything. I saw panic in her eyes, and then she started crying and begging not to tell anyone about it. I honestly did not expect such a reaction from her. I said it was a joke. I did not think she would start to cry. I hadn't seen her like this. She began to calm down and admit that it was a joke. She barely regained consciousness. And since then, there is still some kind of secret. She had no other choice. She had to share her information. She picked up and showed me her belly tattoo. There was a drawing of a butterfly. I was really shocked. The fact is that our family strictly followed the rules in sequence. We were not even allowed to go out or hang out. And if our parents found out about the tattoo, the scandal would be strong. She told me that she has a best friend named Emily. So this girl was also very nimble. And unfortunately, her appendix was removed as a child. The scar was large and not beautiful. She didn't know how to cover it and decided to get a tattoo on the scar. But she was doubting and didn't have the courage to do it. And my sister, as a best friend, decided to support her and agreed to do a tattoo with her, so they did both. After hearing the story, I seemed to understand that friends need to be supported. But so, it was too much for me. Jessica asked me not to tell my parents, otherwise she'd get in a lot of trouble. I decided to keep this secret with her. After all, she is my sister. We must support each other. I promised that no one would find out about it, but she forbade me to do such reckless things, and of course, as an older brother, I advised her to behave well. So I had a little secret with my sister. Of course, it is bad that our parents were not told. I feel guilty in front of them. But I hope that in time there will be a convenient moment when my sister will be able to admit about her tattoo.